Hello, my name is Anna and I love trying vintage recipes. So today I'm trying 3 budget recipes from the 1980s. Today's recipes come to us from Better Homes and Gardens Low Cost Cooking, and I'll talk more about this book a little bit later. Well, folks, we have made it. We are in the home stretch. For all of January, I've been making videos about low-cost budget meals and recipes. And we've made it to the 1980s. This book was published in 1980, so right at the beginning of the decade. I've gotten a really positive response from these videos, so thank you so much. I just hope that maybe I can provide a little bit of inspiration for you when you're meal planning, and maybe you can save a few pennies along the way. I will be providing a cost per serving for each of these dishes, and I'm going to be calculating those costs based on pricing at my local Walmart store. I figured that would probably be the store that people would have the widest access to in my audience. However, I do understand you're not going to have the same access to things as I do. It really depends on where you are, where you live. I just want to provide a basic idea of cost for you. All that being said, let's get started. I'm kicking things off with this cheesy broccoli bake. You can also use spinach to make this dish, but I'm sticking with broccoli as it is in the name. I did have to do a little bit of prep work. I went ahead and cooked 6 ounces of medium egg noodles in boiling salted water, and then I drained those. And then I cooked my 10 ounces of frozen broccoli in a little bit of, just a small amount of boiling salted water. This was really mostly to break the broccoli into pieces. I did that and I chopped it up myself. Alternatively, you could easily use one of those like steamer bags of frozen broccoli. It's really up to what you have. I just wanted to use some things that were already in my freezer. So I have my noodles in this nice big mixing bowl. I'm gonna add my chopped up broccoli. This is a meatless meal. That is a great way to save a little bit of money. And I also have my cottage cheese. Use what you like, but I'm using like the 4% milk fat large curd cottage cheese. It's my favorite kind. Some sour cream. I think this is gonna be a very creamy, cheesy dish. I'm just gonna give that a very gentle stir to start combining things. Let's just get that started. I have some grated Parmesan cheese, and this is 1 egg that has been beaten, some milk, a teaspoon of salt, some dried basil, some dried thyme. We've got some Frank's Red Hot. Just use whatever hot pepper sauce you like. 1/4 to 1 teaspoon of bottled hot pepper sauce. I'm just gonna do a few dashes in here. Give it a little zest. So now I'm just gonna stir all of that together gently to combine. So I'm coming in with my casserole dish, and I need to pour this into an ungreased 2-quart casserole dish. This is right around 2 quarts, just maybe a little bit bigger. So we'll see how it looks. I would say that looks pretty good to me. I love noodles, I love broccoli. And finally, we're gonna make some buttery breadcrumbs, which is just one of my favorite ways to put a topping like on a casserole here. So just some dry breadcrumbs and some melted butter. Mix that all together. Yes. Sprinkle that on the top. I feel like this is gonna be very good. I hope it is. It has a lot of qualities that I enjoy. Beautiful. So now I have to bake this in a 350-degree oven for 45 minutes. Look at that. So toasty, so brown, so beautiful. This smells so delicious. Oh my goodness. It just does. It just does. So let's serve up a little portion here. Okay. Ooh, I let this cool for a little bit, but it's still piping hot, let me tell you. So excited to give this a taste. Might have to wait, it's still so hot. That is good. One more bite and then we'll talk. Okay, so I think the name broccoli cheese bake makes you think like creamy, orange, in-your-face, cheesy casserole, which is also very good. I would not turn that down. This is kind of like, it's almost like a broccoli cheese kugel or something. It's so good with that cottage cheese in there. So good. Okay. I just don't have a lot to say about it because it's delicious. But it is not that like in-your-face cheesy cheese whiz casserole kind of thing. Again, I love a casserole anyway. It's very warm and inviting, super delicious. Let me get that cost per serving. So this recipe makes 6 servings. I think this is like a nice, I did make the full recipe on this one. You had a couple of other options that you could do here, but I made it just kind of like as written with the broccoli. It came out to 97 cents per serving. pretty dang good, I would say, pretty dang good. It is a meatless meal. It has like the cottage cheese and everything in it, and that kind of beefs it up a little bit without the beef. I don't know that I would do much different to this. You know, there's not like onion or garlic in it. I don't really think it needs it, to me anyway. I just think it's perfect as is. I really do. Moving on to this Hamburger-Rice Skillet. A few of you in the comments mentioned that you ate this growing up, like this was your budget recipe, and I was super excited because I knew that I was going to be making this one. Now, I will point out there are some things in this recipe that make it absolutely necessary to read through a few times before you start making it. I'll point those out when I get to them. A Hamburger-Rice Skillet, of course, needs to start with some hamburgers. You also have the option of using ground pork with this, but I'm just going with ground beef. And to that meat, I'm gonna add my onion. This is just like separated into rings. I don't know that it super matters that you cut the onions up like this. This is just what the recipe said to do. I feel like these rings are just gonna like disintegrate anyway. And then some chopped up green pepper. And I'm gonna let that cook all together for a little bit. Now that that's started cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and add my garlic. All right, the meat's all cooked. I've drained some of the fat. I am cutting this recipe in half if I didn't mention that. I'll have the full recipe written in the description down below. So now I need to add my rice, and it says to stir that constantly for 2 minutes. So we're kind of getting this rice a little toasty. In a minute, we're gonna run into a couple of ingredients that are not listed in the ingredients list, and I'll point those out. So I have to add my undrained diced tomatoes, tomato sauce, a little Worcestershire sauce, basil. Those are all listed in the ingredients. However, the water is not listed in the ingredients. It is listed in the recipe. You have to find it in there. And then also the salt. Those two items are not listed in the ingredients at the top of the recipe. I personally think they should be. And actually, when I write the recipe out in the description, I'll go ahead and include them in the ingredients list because, like, why wouldn't you? It's funny, like, when you just run into things like that and you're like, oh, surprise, I need this. And now I just need to bring all of that to a boil. Sure sounds like it's boiling to me. So I'm gonna lower the heat a bit, cover it, and then I have to let this simmer for 25 to 30 minutes until the rice is cooked. Okay, the big reveal. It looks so similar to the rice I made for the eggs Creole in the 1950s video, but this is more scented. Like, it has more spices to it. I think it's seasoned slightly differently. I feel like it was 100 years ago that I made the eggs Creole, so I'll have to double check. But let's dish a little bit of this up and give it a taste. So there's my Hamburger-Rice Skillet. You had the option to add some processed cheese on top, which I went ahead and did. It specifically says American or processed cheese. That's what I did. I'm gonna mix it in though. I think it's gonna be good mixed in so that it melts more. Okay, I said it was similar to the rice that I made for the eggs Creole. It is not the same. This has a lot more pepper in it. So it's very like bell pepper forward, and it almost tastes like a stuffed pepper. Yeah, I could definitely see where sausage would be good in this, but the beef was excellent. It does feel like it has a little bit more seasoning to it. As I said, the cheese is optional, and you don't have to use processed cheese if you don't want. That's just what it says in the recipe. So you can go without the cheese, or you can use like cheddar cheese, jack cheese, whatever you want. Pepper jack might be really good. Truthfully, I like it with the processed cheese. I think it's good. There's really not that much in there, I promise. Yeah, tasty dish. Didn't take a terribly long time, probably like half an hour to put all together and simmer and stuff and get that rice cooked. The cost per serving on this, and this includes the cheese, $1.50 per serving. I cut the recipe in half. So that skillet that you saw, that was 3 servings, 3 pretty generous servings. The full recipe makes 6 servings. I'll have that recipe included in the description down below. This is really delicious. Tastes just like a stuffed pepper, really, and it's probably easier than a stuffed pepper. I'm making these ham and cheese stuffed potatoes, and I absolutely love a baked potato, so I'm really looking forward to these. So first I had to scrub my potatoes thoroughly and bake them, which is what I'm doing right now. So a little bit of prep work there. So the next step is to melt a little bit of butter. My butter is melted, so now I'm adding a little bit of finely diced onion and, surprise, surprise, finely diced celery. No, I don't love celery, but it's really just raw celery that's not my favorite. I can handle a little bit of cooked celery in dishes. So now I need to saute that together until it's soft, and then I'm gonna set it aside. So I have my one baked potato here. The other one is very large, so it's still in the oven, it's still baking, because it needs just a little bit more time, but I thought I'm just gonna go ahead and get started on this one. I let this cool for just a minute. It's soft and baked and all of that, so I'm gonna cut it in half. And you can see, I mean, it's steaming. So now I have to scoop out the insides into a bowl. And you're gonna wanna leave maybe like a quarter of an inch sort of around the edges. I have this spoon that has like kind of a sharper edge to it. And that's what I like to do stuff like this. You might even be able to get like a grapefruit spoon or something. I don't have anything that fancy, but the sharp edge definitely helps. And again, it's still hot. You can let it cool a little longer if you want. I'm being impatient, folks. Okay, so I've scooped the insides out of my potatoes. And when I say that one potato was massive, like this is the potato you saw on camera compared to like this guy. So normally I'm cutting this recipe in half. Normally you would need 3 potatoes to do that, but I feel like this guy counts as 2. So I'm just working with what I have, folks. After you bake the potatoes at 425, you want to drop your oven temperature down to 350 because these are like twice baked potatoes. So you're gonna mash the flesh, potato flesh. I feel like I have murdered a potato with butter. And you don't have to get this super smooth either. This is not like, you know, Thanksgiving mashed potatoes. You're gonna add a lot of things to this, okay? You're gonna add a lot of delicious things to this before you scoop the mixture back into the potato shells. So, set that guy aside, and then I'm gonna add my milk. Mix that in. And a little bit of prepared mustard. A bit of salt, garlic powder, and just a bit of pepper. And this is only the beginning. So now I have some diced ham. You had a few options for this. It said you could use diced ham or you could use pork shoulder, whatever you got. I suppose if you really wanted to, you could probably use bacon, but I'm using diced ham. This would be a great recipe to use up leftover ham. And I have some lovely processed cheese. And now I'm bringing in my mixture of sauteed onions and celery. It's a lot of things in there. So I have a small baking dish here. Bring your potato shells back into the picture. Fit them in there however you can. Look how funny this looks. Okay, I'm gonna put one there and one there because that's what I can do with what I've got. And now I'm gonna take my potato mixture. I'm gonna spoon it into these guys. Yep, we're making some twice baked potatoes. I love baked potatoes as a side, but I think they make a great full meal when you're doing something like this. Or you could go a lot easier than this even and make like just different toppings for your baked potatoes. When I was in elementary school, one of my favorite school lunches, and I think a favorite school lunch of a lot of people, we would have baked potato day. We would do broccoli cheese, or you could alternatively choose taco meat. And that was actually pretty good. I was a broccoli cheese gal. Some of the really brave kids, they would get both. Those were some real culinary adventurers right there. And then of course they had butter available so that like if you didn't like either of those things, you could just get butter. I think you could meal prep something like this too. If you wanted to do a bunch of baked potatoes, you could kind of get them to a certain point like this and then freeze them. I like this. I think this is looking good. If I really wanted to get fancy with it, I could have piped this, but that's not what I'm doing here, folks. So that's what they look like. And now we're gonna do one of my favorite things once again. We're gonna do some buttery breadcrumbs. So I gotta melt a little butter. So the butter goes into the breadcrumbs. Mix, mix, mix. It almost looks like graham cracker crumbs, like when you're making a graham cracker crust. Oh, and then paprika. That goes in there too. I thought I was sprinkling it on top, but apparently it gets mixed into the breadcrumbs. So we'll just get that going too. So I'm gonna sprinkle this. It'll get lovely and crispy, crunchy on top. If some of them fall into the pan, like, don't worry about it. This is not serious. I'm not a serious person, as many have told me. My hands got crumbs on them, but here we go. So now I have to bake these potatoes in a 350-degree oven for 30 minutes. That's a cross section of this ham and cheese stuffed potato. You can see all the goodness that is inside. And that was my super massive potato. I thought I would cut it in half so you could see kind of what was going on. I think this is gonna be great because it has a lot of very flavorful ingredients. And I love a baked potato, don't you? That's delicious. That ham and cheese gives it a lot of good flavor. I added, you know, some extra spices. Even the mustard is good in this. I like to eat the potato skins. I did wash these potatoes very well. Super good. So admittedly, this was like a little bit more work doing a twice baked potato, but there are a couple things you could do. If you're making, you know, baked potatoes earlier in the week as like a side dish, bake a couple of extra and that's part of your work done. That's really what took a long time here. It was baking the potatoes the first time. You can make baked potatoes in the slow cooker. There's a lot of different things you can do. Or if you don't want to take the twice baked route, you can just do baked potatoes with various toppings. Have like a baked potato bar. I love that. Broccoli cheese is definitely a favorite of mine, but you could do ham and cheese, you could do chili, you could do a pizza potato. That would be something that's really fun. But I think it makes a really filling and inexpensive meal. And speaking of inexpensive, let's get the cost per serving. This is the final recipe of my budget series for January. Can you believe it? So the cost per serving on this, $1.54. I think this would be a great meal. I mean, it's great as is, but I think if you added like a little salad with it, it would be even a little bit better. But it's nice, it's warm, it's comforting. It's January. All of the meals I made are pretty warm and comforting. You know, it's that time of year. We did it! Low Cost Cooking was published in 1980. And this is a Better Homes and Gardens cookbook. You know, I love a Better Homes and Gardens cookbook. It's one of those like skinny ones. And something interesting I think about this book is like, this is really the era, I guess, where they started publishing the recipes more in columns like this. It's still the type of layout where the ingredients appear at the top and then the instructions appear underneath it, although in one of my recipes, they did sneak in a couple of ingredients that weren't in the, you know, top of the list. They're in these like columns that go this way. And I'm not gonna say that's like my absolute favorite. I don't know, something about everything being sort of beside each other in this way, it makes it hard for me to read, or it makes it very easy for me to mix up recipes. So when I was making the ham and cheese stuffed potatoes, I kept almost reading the recipe for spicy ham patties with apple rings. These also aren't really broken up with any illustrations or photographs like on the page with the recipe. It's, you know, they're incorporated sort of throughout the book on their own pages, like this. Sorry, I'm trying not to get too much of a glare. These are very shiny pages. Yeah, I mean, I love Better Homes and Gardens cookbooks. I've done a lot of them on this channel. When we start getting into like the late 70s, the early to mid 80s, that's kind of when we get away from the more like whimsical photographs and things. Everything just feels a little bit more serious, I guess. I don't know if that's really the right way to say it. You know, if you think back to those Better Homes and Gardens cookbooks from the early to mid 60s, I think, with the colorful spines, those had like the best photographs, the best table settings, full menus and buffets and everything. Like, these are still good. I still love these books. You know, I think the Soups and Stews cookbook was sort of very similar to this design, but I really like those like very, you know, fun, colorful kinds of photographs of that time. But again, that doesn't mean these recipes aren't wonderful, because they are. Look, we've got a Jell-O mold. That is, what are you? Salad ambrosia. Beautiful. Beautiful. This like lettering style and the font style, like it really does feel, and you can, I'll just show the cover because you can see more of it here. Like this does feel very like early 80s to me. The brown and like the earth tones of the cover in the back here, like that also feels very early 80s. A lot of brown tones, a lot of paneling at that time that I remember. That's what the 80s looked like to me. So this was published 1 year before I was born. Pretty reflective, I think, of that era. This book does have a lot of very good information. So there's a section just on cutting food costs. I haven't read this section super thoroughly, like cover to cover, whatever, but I suspect that there are a lot of good pieces of advice in here that would still apply today. Not every piece of advice from some of these cookbooks is really going to carry through exactly, depending on trends and costs and things like that. We do have some menus here though, which is good. I love a menu, and I especially love it when most of the recipes, if not all of the recipes, appear in the book itself, because I do see a lot of menus in cookbooks where they're like, okay, we're gonna have 6 items on this menu and only half of them are gonna have a recipe in the cookbook. So this book is divided into chapters, and a lot of the chapters are based on like the type of meat you're making, or also like there's a course section for side dishes, but you know, they have a section on beef, there's one on poultry, we have one that's specifically just sausage and franks. Oh, you know me, a meatless main dish. I love a meatless main dish. You know, in this meatless main dish section, it has like buying eggs, choosing cheese, using legumes. So all of those like protein sources, side dishes and desserts. This book has something for everyone, I think. Ooh, sweet potato pineapple bake, heck yeah. Sweet potatoes were so on sale last week, so I might have to make this. Definitely stocked up on those. Broccoli potato bake, lots of great side dishes. I'm gonna have to revisit this book again for some side dish recipes when the time comes. A little full disclosure time here. I'm filming my content a little bit ahead of time because I have some commitments coming up that are gonna prevent me from filming. So I have made so many recipes in the last 2 weeks, folks. It was a lot. So 1980s budget recipes. So the first recipe I made was cheesy broccoli bake. That was delicious. It had a lot of good qualities about it, a lot of things that I really enjoyed. I like broccoli a lot. I like noodles a lot. I like cottage cheese and like cheese in general quite a bit. Kind of like a savory, like broccoli cheese kind of kugel to me anyway, like texture wise. Very, very good. It was a casserole. It was like very much the type of meal that maybe you would come home to when you were a kid. Like that's the kind of thing I remember. The kitchen smelling really good and you had like a nice warm noodly meal. But I really liked it. And it was very affordable. It was 97 cents a serving. So, you know, pretty good. It was under $1 a serving. That would also be a really great thing, I think, to take to like a potluck. Or, you know, if you're taking a meal to someone, maybe they're sick, maybe someone just had a baby, you know, maybe they're grieving, something like that. Like take a meal to someone, that would be something that would be really good to take because I think it reheats really well, you know. You could even make that and put it into like smaller sort of tins or containers that could be frozen, or, you know, if you want to put like make smaller pans of it that could be like baked off later, I think that would be a great option for something like that. So then the second dish was the Hamburger-Rice Skillet. Delightful. I really liked that one. It was somewhat similar to the rice that I made for the eggs Creole in my 1950s video, but it was similar but different is what I said. It tasted more of peppers because it had a lot more peppers in it. It was kind of like an unstuffed pepper. And I know the cheese was optional and, you know, you could probably use whatever cheese you want if you were just gonna use it as a garnish. I went with the processed cheese, the Velveeta-esque cheese. Honestly, so good when you mixed it in. I think for me, like if I made that one again, 100% I would use the processed cheese again. It's not that much, just a little. And then you mix it in and it's like, got that like lovely melty cheesiness. So delicious. And it really makes it into something different. I enjoyed that one. Also, completely like a stovetop recipe. You know, some of these are things that you had to bake and stuff, but this was just totally on a skillet on the stovetop. So it didn't really take that long either. Yes, and I did include, even though the cheese was optional, I did include it in my cost per serving, and that was $1.50. So really good, like a very filling meal between the rice, the beef, and like the veggies that were in it. So delicious. Like I enjoyed that one a lot. Finally, the ham and cheese stuffed potatoes. So good. When I kind of like ate a few more bites of that, I was like, this reminds me of something, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And then it came to me. So there's like ham, there's mustard, and then there's some processed cheese in it. And it reminds me, I think I've even talked about these. My mom used to make these sandwiches. She probably still does. It's like ham, processed cheese, like a slice of American cheese, and then mustard or like Dijonnaise, and you wrap them in foil and you bake them. And that's what it tasted like. It tasted just like that in a potato, and it was delightful. I loved it. I really like a baked potato anyways. I would maybe even categorize it as like one of my favorite foods. I don't know. I think it's just because you can use it as a side dish, but you can use it as a main dish too. If you do it up right, like it can be your main meal. I think a baked potato bar is super fun. There are just endless combinations of things you can put on a baked potato and make it delicious. This one, a little bit time consuming, I'm not gonna lie, but I think it's something you could meal prep. So if you were gonna just like bake off a bunch of potatoes, make them up to the point where you like mash up the potato with the stuff in it and you spoon that back in. I think you could make those ahead of time and bake them later, and it would be really, really good. Or again, just make a baked potato and put stuff on it. I talked about it a little bit while I was making potatoes, but that was like one of my favorite school lunches. My elementary school and high school, everything, all my schools were small because I grew up in a small town. I don't know how schools are now, but we actually had like a real full kitchen where they cooked all the food. It wasn't like cooked off site and brought in. So like they were the cooks, the lunch ladies, like bless them, they actually made and prepared the food like right in the school. And baked potato day, like I always had to buy my lunch on baked potato day because it was an event. The event of the month was baked potato day for me. So yeah, I have very fond memories of having that as a school lunch. Oh my gosh, we did it. I did it, you did it. We worked on this together, right? So this is actually the last video of my January budget recipe series. I made 12 recipes, okay? 12 recipes that are a little bit nicer to your budget. And I just went back through because I wanted to figure out, okay, which was the most expensive and which was the least expensive. The most expensive dish that I made for this series was $2.12 a serving, and it was the chili con carne from the 1950s video. So my very, very first video of January of 2024. I mean, $2.12, that is still very cost effective. Like, that's still a very good price, I think. And then the least expensive, I actually thought it was something else. And then I went back through my notes and I realized that it wasn't what I thought it was. What I thought it was the Denver sandwich. That was 70 cents. And then I realized the eggs Creole. The eggs Creole were it was 51 cents per serving for that dish. And it was a really good, like a very unexpected kind of dish. You know, and I know that it's very similar to shakshuka and eggs in purgatory. I've had those dishes, very good, like favorites of mine. But yeah, still kind of different with that rice. I think all of these dishes, most of them I would make again. There are a couple that I would only make again with some significant changes. I think all of these dishes, if nothing else, they're a good starting point and they can provide some like good ideas for meal planning for the future. If you watched all 4 of these videos in my series, like thank you so very much. I had a lot of fun doing this. It was a little bit more work. I mean, all of my videos are work, but I also love making them for you, so it's fine. I hope this video provided a little bit of inspiration for you, or maybe reminded you of some dishes that you haven't made in a while. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you'd like to see some additional content from me, you can join me over on Patreon. I will leave a link in the description down below if you're interested. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.